All right, Chas, we got a high octane podcast going on. The first one that we're doing in the Octane Studios, if you want to call it that. So really excited about that. It was a fun project for me and my dad. So yeah, here we are. But Ryan Chassis, he's our director of remote pitching. Ryan has done a fantastic job, and we'll highlight some of the athletes that he's been working with here in a little bit. But kind of wanted to give you the floor, brother. Kind of introduce yourself and where you're at now. Obviously, you're playing right now, so um, yeah, floor is yours.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for having me on. A little bit about myself. I grew up in the Raleigh area, kind of pretty close to where Octane's at right now, and played for 4 years at Middle Creek High School, 4 years at Campbell. Got drafted by the Blue Jays. Played a couple years with them. Like you said, currently playing now in the Frontier League in Pennsylvania, the Washington Wild Things.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, man, came to you guys in August of last year.
Hmm.
I needed to make a change for my career in order to keep progressing and for to be able to keep playing and have not regretted it for a second. I think that what we do at Octane and what you guys have done for me has been um, awesome, and can't speak enough about how much it's changed my career and kind of from where I was to where I am now.
Yeah. Well, kind of. I don't want to be the one to say it, but can you tell everybody what you're doing with the Blue Jays? Now you're throwing 96, but before you were a certain specialist.
Yeah. So drafted as a primary reliever. Ended up throwing knuckleballs for about 8 months, and really struggled to do that. And
Yeah. I don't even know if I've asked you this really. Like what was their thought process? And when they drafted you, we were like, okay, we're gonna make you a knuckleballer. Did they ever explain to you why they did that?
yeah, so honestly, I don't think we've ever talked about it, but so they
Yeah.
had no idea when they drafted me. Was normal pitcher like everyone else.
Hmm.
Right after I got signed, went to low A, and one of the coordinators saw me throwing it in BP, messing around.
Okay.
You know, 95% of the team's going to try and throw knuckleballs during BP or whatever. Um, and I tell the story. I had a teammate when I was 10. His name was Kevin McSoley, and he threw one on. We were on an all-star team together at West Raleigh, and it was the coolest thing ever, in my opinion. So I had, for the next 12 years of my life, had thrown, knuckleballs messing around because, like, oh, Kevin did it. Like, that was really cool.
Sure.
So I would say that I had a pretty good mess around knuckleball, and they saw me throw it, and they're like, "Hey, you should throw that in a game. Like, maybe that's what's going to be your ticket." And pro ball's all about doing something
Hmm.
out of the ordinary, right? Which so that part of it made sense. I said absolutely not, because
Hmm.
that was very far from my competitive nature, and that turned into me throwing it on the Edgertronic cameras after the season, and oh, that looks cool. Maybe we can get you in contact with R.A. Dickey played for the
Yeah.
Blue Jays, and I got to talk to him a couple times, worked with him a couple times, and that was probably one of the cooler experiences I've ever had. Like, he's
Cy Young winner, right? Yeah.
Cy Young winner. He's an amazing, amazing guy. I still talk to him to this
Sure.
day, actually. But eventually that turned into, I had an injury in 23, and you know they wanted to pursue that avenue, and
Hmm.
um, I felt like that was what they really wanted me to do, and took that road for lack of a better option. And looking back on it now, and I think that I was good at it when I wasn't thinking about it too much, and it was a
Yeah.
kind of happy-go-lucky pitch for me. And I probably had thrown it in a game in my life 7 times before we made that decision. And but yeah, I had gotten basically kind of learned it a little bit on my own. Obviously, had some help from Mr. Dickey and stuff like that, but A lot of it was on my own. I
Yeah.
believe I actually signed another guy that is one of my best friends now that we worked on it together. But
It
yeah,
wasn't the guy that you had, um, from West Raleigh.
it wasn't no. But yeah, so my buddy actually is pitching that same league right now as I am.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, but anyway, long story short, didn't work out and got released in June. Yeah, June of last year. Tried to go play
Okay.
ball, couldn't find a spot.
Yeah.
Eventually came to you like right after came had a tryout for a team that didn't work out.
Hmm.
I think I called you driving home from it or something like that, and that's kind of how
Yeah.
this process all started. But it was 87, 89 in my first bullpen, and
Hmm.
have I had a PR in my entire life on pro day with you guys. Have been just a better pitcher overall. Like obviously the numbers are cool and everything else, but
Right.
I have a way better understanding of my body and what I need to do to be, a better pitcher. I
Yeah.
think at the end of the day is the most important thing. So can't thank you guys enough for that.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I think it's obviously easy, to work with you, and um, I think that's why you're in a position with us now, right? Like, being able to handle however many remote guys. I think it's 40 or close to 40 guys that you're working with, and staying in contact with, and putting a lot of effort into. I think that was a pretty easy decision for us once we kind of saw your work ethic and how you interact with guys and what your passion is for coaching. And we'll definitely talk about that, and highlight some dudes that you're excited about. But, I think what the question I had was going back to the knuckleball thing. How do you think that affected your mechanics? Because obviously the knuckleball throw is a very different throw than trying to throw the baseball 95 miles an hour. At
Absolutely.
least in theory it is, but when you're out there and you're trying to float knuckleballs in there compared to throw 95 from the left side with carry, like what are some differences that you've felt or have since changed, obviously, since going back to a power, power lefty?
Yeah. So I mean, like you said, like there's a lot of differences, and I think that for the most part, it's a completely different throw.
Yeah.
Uh, and part of the reason I think I had some success with it at first was because I threw it, kind of like a fastball,
Hmm.
where my only thought process was really just to throw the top of the ball. And again, I was good when I was messing around with it, right? So
Sure.
delivery was the same. um we can clip some videos and hear about where it was before, and then
Yeah, for sure.
you know working with some of the coaches down there, and with Mr. Dickey. Like the goal was to be
You're so
uh,
polite, Mr. Dickey.
yeah, I mean, yeah, he's the man, like I
Yeah.
said.
No,
um
I'm sure he'll appreciate that.
Working with him, and I think being, you know the goal, I think at least, which there's probably some more communication from their end with this, but was to be a, you know eat a bunch of innings, and so the goal mechanically was to streamline the delivery so that I could repeat the knuckleball as well as I could.
Hmm.
And that was, I'm like, I mean, you can speak on this too, but I think too much generally. So
Hmm.
giving something that was completely, new to me, like I moved all the way over on the rubber. Um, I'm 6'3", 260 pounds. Like I'm a big guy. I move fast. I don't think anyone would ever watch me pitch and say like, oh, his body is like, very smooth, very in control.
Yeah, right.
But to throw a knuckleball, you for the most part you have to be like pretty aware of where your body is in space. You have to be, um, able to repeat your delivery to a
Sure.
T, right? Because I think I have a ball over here, but basically how the ball comes out of your hand, even if it's like a millisecond difference, is where the ball's spinning the wrong way, or it's not what we're looking for. So I think
Yeah,
that was the biggest thing. I mean, the whole process was tough for me in terms of that, but I mean, also had some mental stuff stemming from, not being able to do what I wanted to,
sure.
with
It's
the
frustrating,
ball,
I'm
and
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of guys have gone through it, and just I think that's I'm grateful for that in terms of I think that there's 3 or 4 kids that I've worked with or players that I've played with that I've been able to kind of talk through my process with that, and like obviously like there's a Y word that no one
Yeah.
likes to use in this sport, and I think that that's pretty much where I was. So
Yeah.
being able to go through that and um, come out the other side better, and again, as a result of a lot of hard work from you guys too. But yeah, I mean, like I said, pretty much everything changed in terms of my delivery. Um, I know the key word that you're probably looking for is everything was really pushy, right?
Mm.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
at the end of the day, that pitch we're trying to, you know,
Push in a sense, right? I
push in
mean,
a sense, right? The idea is that we're going to be more athletic and throw the pitch, but just kind of as a whole, like you're going to get pushy throwing a pitch like that. So,
yeah.
when I came to you guys, I remember I tell everyone that I talk to about
Well,
this,
came to
but
us. You're part of the team too.
absolutely. Well, at
Yeah,
the
I
time
know.
I
I
came
know.
to you guys, and
Yeah.
I tell a lot of people this about our facility. But the day I did my first 3D, mocap,
Hmm.
you called me at like 9 o'clock that night, and I think you had a meeting, so you weren't watching me throw, but you were fired up because I think your words were, "I can't believe you threw a baseball 90 miles an hour with
Yeah.
how your stuff looks right now, with how."
Hmm.
And we've worked a lot on shoulder ER,
Hmm.
horizontal abduction were like the 2 big things with the arm at least. But like I said, I don't move super well, so being able to see all that stuff on the 3D and on with all the numbers
Yeah.
was huge.
Well, you're a unit, dude. So like, there's obviously a huge strength component. I know Salt would obviously, we'll talk about the mobility piece too, and Brandon, who always, he'll always say that mobility is kind of like the foundation of the pyramid, really.
Yeah,
If we don't have the requisite mobility to throw a baseball 95 miles an hour, it's going to be damn near impossible, right? So you rarely see guys that are stiff movers. Just because you're strong, like you look at bodybuilders and you watch them throw out a first pitch, or you watch it like pro wrestlers throw out a first pitch, right? Those absolute behemoths. They don't have any mobility, and there's no chance in hell they'll ever throw a baseball over
70.
60, yeah, 70 miles an hour, right? So obviously having that mobility was a really big part of kind of what we did with you, and utilizing a lot of the plyo bell drills. And I mean, you can speak to it too, but on the prep side, like I think we always knew you were super strong. It's just like, okay, how do we get you into some positions, some deeper end ranges, really, to allow you to get the timing correct, right? And to get, that shoulder external rotation like you talked about, and allowing the arm to kind of trail the body a little bit. All those good things, man. And that's, I think, a big reason why what'd you hit in pro day?
94.7, I think.
Yeah. So, and now I think you said you texted me was that last night where you're up to 94 the other night too now, and um, all really positive things, man. But shoot, obviously we put in work, but you put in all the work. You're the one that had to do it. So
I appreciate
obviously excited for you, and I think you should be pitching an affiliate ball at some point. I think you
I hope
have the
so.
stuff to do that. You have the work ethic to do it. So, it's just a matter of it's more of a win, not if, in my opinion. But
I appreciate it.
yeah, no, of course. And as far as the season's, how's that going for you right now? What are some highlights? What are some things you feel like you're doing well? What are some things you could be doing better? For you to take that next step. What are you thinking?
Yeah, man. I think it's gone okay so far. I've
Hmm.
like I said, I'm a perfectionist, so it's going to be difficult for me to give
Sure.
my too much praise. But I think that um, starting off, like I think my first, it had been a year since I've been in a game, right? So it's
Hmm.
been that part of it was interesting, getting back into a schedule. Because like it's a little bit easier when we're at the facility and everything's a little bit more regimented and I have time to do everything. So
Yeah.
uh, I think for the most part I've competed well in the zone.
Hmm.
Um, we pretty much did a complete overhaul mechanically, or not mechanically, excuse me, like pitch design wise
Yeah.
from a an Octane standpoint this
Yeah.
offseason. I
Just
think,
overall arsenal and usage and
yeah,
things like that. Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
And I think that those things have been, really, really good for me. There's been lapses where I've had some struggles with the strike zone, but other than that, I think I can't really complain too much. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, but the whiff rates are really good right now, and
Yeah. Remember seeing that.
um, yeah, strikeout numbers have been good, especially recently. So I think
Yeah.
continuing to own that delivery work and work on
Hmm.
those plyo things, and basically what you and I have talked about is kind of what I've done with some of these kids where, I'm feeling this. What do you think can help? And you sent me a bunch of plyo drills that I can work into my daily work, and I think those
Right.
have been really big for me. But yeah, like the last 2 weeks have been definitely a step in the right direction in
For
terms of a lot
sure.
of that stuff.
Yeah. Like you said, it's, we can, anybody can just like slap a drill package on, right? But it's like, why are we doing those drills and what is the intent in those drills and how are we doing those drills, right? Like, I think there's a lot more nuance to the like drill packages, right? Like, are they sequenced right? Are they actually applicable to like, in-game stuff? Like, there's just a lot that goes into that. And, um, I think you kind of understand that now as you've been programming for guys. Like, you don't want to just like slap something on there and say, okay, go do that. Like, I think, having explanations why and kind of being able to get the kids to buy into that why, kind of speed that process up, right? And it's easy for me to say it to you because we've worked together, you've seen results, and you've worked with the whole team. It's just and again we'll get more into that on the remote side, but remote's challenging, man. Like I think it's a really hard model for kids to get better. That's why it's so important to have the right people in place to be able to do it at a high level, because there has to be communication, right? And you've learned that a lot of these kids sometimes don't want to communicate, even as hard as you want to try, and to get them to. So having that feedback, of like how certain things are feeling, and somebody that's dedicated to getting that feedback is really, really important, I think. So sorry for going off a little tangent there, but I
Good.
just want to make sure that that was addressed. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I think, from all that you've been through with, going to the Blue Jays and becoming a knuckleballer, then not being a knuckleballer, and then training and, having a lot of, I don't want to say doubts, but a lot of questions as far as like where you're going to be next, right? Like, how do you take some of that adversity that you've been through, and, put it towards the coaching side and the playing side? Because obviously you're still playing, but like, are you one that like, has it helped you at all, do you think? Like, do you feel like it's hurt you? Where are you kind of at with that aspect? A lot of guys will just kind of like fold and be done with it and say, "Oh, it wasn't for me." But to see somebody like you to kind of that pushes the limit, I think. How do you take that into coaching?
Yeah. I mean, I think specifically, from a playing side, I think that, like you said, a lot of guys might have just been done.
Hmm.
For me, it was something where you know, I felt unfulfilled with how everything shook out. I think that I had more to show, and maybe, whether I got a fair shake or not is to be seen. But
Sure.
I think that aspect of it has been big for me in terms of talking to, you know, kids that are looking to go to college or looking to make their varsity high school teams, or
Hmm.
kids that are looking to get to pro ball, where I can use a variety of instances that have been, maybe really difficult for me, or something that I've found a way to fight through
Right.
and stuff like that. And I think that's probably my favorite part of the remote process, and what we've done so far is being able to use my experiences as a whole to help someone that might be in a similar situation. Because I mean, I genuinely think that, you know, I basically had one offer that, was really important to me in
Hmm.
college, and I took it. I wasn't super highly recruited. Um, showed up to campus and probably should have gotten, showed up out of shape. Like, and you can ask Coach Hare and, all my Campbell coaches, like they didn't think I was going to make it through the fall when I first showed up, and ended up having some success as a freshman. Had Tommy John surgery after that. So the injury thing I get too. Like a lot of these kids are obviously, ideally we're not having any injuries like that, but
Hmm.
for kids that have already gone through it, like I've been there, like I get it.
Yeah.
Really struggled or not really struggled, but struggled my sophomore year. Made a transition to the bullpen where I didn't really know what I was doing, and so I think the variety of circumstances that I've been through, got to go pitch in the Cape, the draft process. Like we've talked to, a couple of our high school kids. Like obviously you had a different draft process at Ole Miss, but someone for me that wasn't very highly sought after. Like, what did my draft process look like?
Yeah.
So I think having a variety of experiences like that has been pretty much my favorite part of the remote, coaching, where I can
Mm.
say, I had, you think of an example, like I had one of my college arms through last week really struggled. It's like his third or fourth outing post surgery.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe not really struggled, but he had a bad outing, and he said he was, really struggling to find it and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I remember, my second start, my sophomore year, my redshirt sophomore year after surgery. Like I had, a couple, maybe an inning or two where I was just not, myself. And then like obviously like the doubt starts to creep in at that point. Like, am I the same as I was before?
Hmm.
Stuff like that. But I was able to kind of text him and be like, hey, like this is normal, and a
Yeah.
lot of people have gone through it. So
Right.
that human side of the job has been kind of the most fulfilling, I think, in my opinion.
No, that's great. I mean, I obviously went through some injuries too, and it's you go through that stuff, man. Like, I think, the physical thing is one thing, it hurts for a little bit, but I think the mental side is the hardest thing to go through any kind of injury, where it takes you out for a while and that the coming back process, there's all of that I think is so difficult and so overlooked. Like, it takes a little bit, it's very rare to see a guy like come back from an outing and just be lights out again,
Yeah.
or come back from injury for their first outing and be lights out. Like that's hard, and like you said, I think that human element is so important. And if that's not in remote coaching, then it's it's really difficult to get the most out of the athlete, right? Because we can sit here and say like, oh, like hey, remote coaching, here's your drill packages, go ahead. But like, if you're not taking the time to get to know the player and actually care about the player and the human side, like it's really easy to just have a very transactional relationship, right?
Absolutely.
But to put that in is so important, man. I think that's why you're a perfect, person for this job because you are very empathetic to a lot of these things. And, because no matter what, dude, I don't care what program you do or who you train with, like you're going to do bad at times.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of baseball. And if you don't have somebody that you can, confide in and have those human conversations, then, we're really not doing our job to the highest level, I think. So, I think that's super important. So I kind of wanted to talk about that though. Like, what do you think doing, remote with us? Why do you think it's different than some other places? Like what sets us apart, you think? And I think it's the human element. I think that's a huge aspect of this, but is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. I mean, I was going to start there. I think that, in my travels, I've come across a bunch of guys that have done remote through, all the other big places and
Hmm.
even small places. And I think a good example of this is, Jacob Edwards, who just
Yeah.
signed the Reds with us. Great story.
Hmm.
We've got a video out there on Instagram, so you guys should go check that out. But he's done all the big places, and he says that, I'm going to misquote him a little bit probably, but I think that he said something to the effect of, Octane is just the most human, you know, people that actually care about you in terms of getting better rather than, hey, here's $600 that this guy sent me this month. Here's,
Hmm.
a paper calendar I'm going to print out with what you're supposed to do every day. And I think that, um, like we've talked about for the last few minutes, I think the human element of our program is, above and beyond anything I've heard from anyone else.
Hmm.
And just being able to, I pride myself in being able to be available for, the kids and all the athletes that are, under us as much as I can be.
Hmm.
So, for example, like if I've got a doubleheader, we had a doubleheader on Thursday. We started at 5 o'clock. I made probably 4 or 5 calls pregame when we were at the hotel, and then obviously from 5 to about 11, I'm out of commission, and then I'm gonna
Yep.
get on my computer on the bus and respond to texts and emails and watch video for guys and stuff like that. So
Sure.
it's been a big point of emphasis for me not to, you know, if someone texts me, I'm gonna get back to them before I go to bed and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I think that part of it is really important, and I think that the quality, like, and we can circle back to the training aspect of it, where something for me that's gone or that's been very like so beneficial for me, and again, because I've gone through it, I believe it. It's not, you
Hmm.
didn't hire some intern that has never thrown any, has never done any of your drills to
Right.
program, right? So like this
Hmm.
is, and I can use a lot of the stuff that has helped me. So for someone that had a pushy arm action, like, oh, I've done 10 of these drills over the course of my program.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, but long story short, I think that the human element of our remote is above and beyond where anyone else is. And I think that, especially with where we're at, price wise, it's an absolute steal.
Uh, so I think we can talk about this. We can just kind of like talk about how do you balance like, you know, obviously we talked about the mindset things for a lot of guys, but like, obviously, the mechanical aspect too, right? Like how do you kind of build out some of these plans, for the athletes and what's kind of the first step in that process, I guess. What are you looking for? And how do you build out, I know you kind of operate like on a weekly basis because
Yeah.
a lot of these guys are throwing right now. So just kind of go through your process if you want.
Yeah, man. So like the first thing that we're gonna do is when say you're about to sign up with us, we are going to, in your contract, there's gonna be an option to do an in-house or a um remote assessment.
Hmm.
The in-house one is gonna be, Coach Solter is gonna do, it's super intensive. There's like 50 separate mobility screens that he does,
Yep.
different, body parts, how we move. um, then you also do force plays with Joey and the Proteus with Matt as well. So like we get a bunch of data from that. If you
Hmm.
decide not to do that, we'll send you a link. You'll do a remote assessment,
Hmm.
and basically what you're going to do is send us about.
Did you say the mocap too? Sorry.
I did not yet.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Got it. Go
We'll get there. But
ahead.
the yeah, the remote assessment, you'll send me a bunch of videos doing a couple different exercises, and that's going to kind of determine how you move as a whole.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, like you just said, the mocap as well. So that there's an option for our 3D Qualisys motion capture system. The big skeleton you see on all of our social pages, like that's where all that
Yep.
stuff comes from. Plus, way too much data and everything. So basically, I tell people that the mocap is a cheat sheet on how you throw. There's
Yep.
everything that you do is quantified, and it tells us exactly how we can get you better and what we need to do that. So that's also an option. So for a guy that wants to do the in-house assessment and the mocap, basically I have as much data as I want at my fingertips to build their plan out. So
Hmm.
I've worked with Coach Solter, who, comes from that Cressy tree, and in terms of all the strength stuff. And what we'll do is we'll build all, the whole plan out in terms of prep, which is kind of our, what you do at the beginning of the day to get your body moving.
Right.
A lot of that stuff is going to be determined by how you move. So, for example, my prep, I've got a bunch of hip stuff, I have a bunch of T spine stuff, I have a bunch of, you know, pec opener stuff.
But yeah, I think obviously that is so important because so many guys like you'll get these plans and they're not really individualized at all.
Yeah,
And if we're not doing any sort of assessment, I don't know what people are doing. You
yeah,
know, like if we're just kind of blindly saying, "Oh, here's this," without seeing any throw or do any sort of, if it's the online assessment or if it's coming in, like we have no idea what the hell we're doing.
absolutely. And I think that, going back to that process, I think that being able to build out a plan based on how someone moves is the most important thing. Like you talked about, Brandon's MO here is that mobility is you know, the building block on
Yeah,
everything here. So I think
yeah.
that being able to understand how someone moves is of the utmost importance. I think that I do that in a variety of ways, but our
Hmm.
code assessment, or if you were to do the in-house assessment, that shows me. But I also have everyone who signs up send me video of them pitching, because you know there's some instances of guys that move really really well, you know, just in life and in the weight room and everything else, and can't do it on the mound. So
Hmm.
I think that being able to determine how someone moves, both in a vacuum and also in actual competition, are really big things.
Yeah,
That's
for
going to be
sure.
like the basis of where we're going with our program. And the way that we have it set up is everything's going to be based on what your assessment shows us. So all of your prep, all of your delivery design, so our water bags, our PVC pipe drills, our med ball drills are all going to be determined on how we move down the mound, what constraints we have, with our body.
Yep.
Same thing for how we're going to attack a throwing plan, how we're going to work through our lifting, and what you know, a lot of the guys are going to have, some main lifts that might look pretty similar, but, for, player A, they don't move very well rotationally. And we're going to
Right.
do a lot of rotational work. Or player B is, and this is a real example where someone has a really, really rough T spine. Like he doesn't move very well, he doesn't separate very well. That guy's going to do completely unilateral work. He's going
Hmm.
to we're going to be able to rotate his spine, and like that's our main emphasis on how he moves, and we can bring that into every single part of our program, rather
Right.
than just like, hey, a good example, like in pro ball, I got a bunch of, oh, you don't move you don't your hip separation isn't very, or hip shoulder separation isn't great.
Sure.
I'm like, all right, cool, like how do I fix that?
Yeah, now what?
Yeah. And I think that that's been, I'll go off on a little tangent again, but I think that that's like the biggest thing, difference that I see in where we are as a company, and what I've seen in my personal training before I was part of the company, is the actual, science to actual results.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, a lot of orgs, a lot of pro college, whatever, a lot of people give you what you do wrong and then don't give you anything to help do it.
I have a theory on that though, like
What you got?
especially on the pro ball side of things, like, and I hope I'm wrong here, but at the end of the day, the players are investments, right? Like that's how the ownership looks at a lot of this.
Yeah,
And if I know I can get 300 kids in the draft, whatever it is in the draft, how many rounds are there? 20 now?
20.
20. So let's say, with the Latin Americans and, international signings, however many you have coming into your organization every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if I can get them on a mocap and I can say, okay, red flag, red flag, red flag, I know that I can trade him because he's more at risk to get hurt. Or I know if I get this guy and we get him to the big leagues, and, let's say they don't do a mocap until he gets, to the big leagues or whatever. They have Hawkeye and all these things now, but
Yeah.
they can say, okay, like this is a really big risk. Let's trade him or let's release him, or yeah, this is going to go, or we don't want to sign him to the biggest contract. I think a lot of these teams have the data, and I don't think it's a lack of like coaching, because I think there's some really quality, especially on the pro ball side, some really good coaches out there, and teams are really kind of shifting towards that development model. But like, are the players really getting exactly, and maybe I'm putting my tinfoil hat here on, but like, are the players really getting, the information and are they doing the data for the right reasons? I don't know. I mean, I think, there's some teams that are probably doing it for that and which is unfortunate. And I think, because like I said, I don't think I don't think it's a lack of coaching. I think it's a lack of them wanting to give away some of that information.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with you. I think that I've seen some of that, in my own experiences and some others where, um, teams may have enough resources to share learnings and don't.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an interesting theory. I think that, obviously you've been up and down a couple different orgs, so I think that you
Mhm.
have some more room.
Yeah, and I don't think it really ever happened to me. I think the teams that I were with were pretty good, and we did the with the Brewers. It was fantastic. They did the mocap, and um, I don't. It was very new. Like they just opened that lab up when I tore my ACL in 2019. So I was like one of the first people to ever throw on it. Um, and I just don't know if they had like the procedure in place to really like relay information at a high level. I mean, they did great. I have nothing to negative to say about them. They were fantastic, but I don't think they were doing anything,
Yeah,
with any malintent. I just think, you could possibly see kind of it going in that direction.
I could see it too. It's a
Yeah.
definitely interesting thought. I know you and I have talked about that at the facility
Yeah.
a little bit.
And because
But,
that's what like I think private companies like, Octane and others that have that and are able to access the data and make it really like the player can see it and we can go over it with the player and like have like actionable like
yeah,
processes in place to be like, hey, this is what this means. Like we were talking about it, we kind of went off on a tangent, but this is your hip shoulder separation is X. This is how you compare it to your cohort. Boom. Okay, this is what we need to do to get it better, right? Like I think that's the value in kind of what we're able to do because so many kids and so many players, not only at the pro level, but high level high school guys and it gives them answers to like what the problems have been. And I
yeah,
think that's the power of the motion capture system is there's no guessing. Like, hey, this is what the numbers say, dude. Like, you may think you feel this, but you don't. It's not real. Um, and how do we now program to get this number better? Right?
yeah.
It's a pretty simple process there. So yeah, sorry for kind of
No, you're good.
going
And
conspiracy theory on you, but
well,
that's I had to get that out.
I agree with you there. And I think that because, you know, because there's so much more information, like I think the teams are probably learning how to distribute it and,
Yeah.
you know, it'll be interesting to see kind of where that takes us. But I do think, back to the original point, I do think that Octane does a very good job of, actually transmitting information and also coming up with a plan specifically based around that information. I think data driven, we've thrown around the office a bunch, but I think that we can really say that we are data driven in terms of
Yeah.
how we program, how we go about things. Even something as small as if I've got a parent texting me about their son who struggled this week, and
Hmm.
he sends me a video and I can slow it down, screenshot it, and show him based on um, the skeleton figure from his 3D. We talked about, hey, your head sometimes ends up all the way over here. And you see how you're doing that in that video. They're like, oh,
Right.
wait, that's, something that maybe we forgot about in the last 2 months. And, I couldn't figure out why everything was getting pulled that way. And there's,
Right.
everything has an answer, right? And I think that part of our job in the remote world is trying to find an answer without a ton of, clues. But
Right.
I think,
Yeah, like you have the foundation that you get from like if they do a mocap or whatever it is, like you have a pretty good idea just based off of using the video. Um, but it's challenging, right? And I think, I don't we're working on some things to hopefully, have some data on the remote side when they send videos in. I don't want to,
yeah,
sorry for calling Joey out and put more pressure on him there, but that's something I'm pretty excited about.
yeah, that's
Build models and things to be able to hopefully, measure some things a little bit more objectively,
Yeah,
with video, which I think is going to be a huge um, benefit, right? Because we can get the athlete to actually see where they're at and if they're making progress, and actually get in-game data. Because I think
yeah,
uh, I see this a lot on the higher level side. Like guys will come in and throw on the mocap, and the velo's way down,
yeah,
and that's normal. Like that's a lot of guys are like that. I was like that. So it's like, are we really getting exactly what is going on in game, numbers wise? And unless you're really getting after it, and the velo's where it is in game, like you can still get a good foundation, and you can still kind of have an idea of where everything's at, but. Um, that's another question. Like, how do we get guys to like have the adrenaline spike in a bullpen and in a mocap to be able to have the exact data? Like
yeah,
that's more on the psychological side, I guess. But
yeah. And that's why Hawkeye is so cool that they're
yeah,
able to essentially 3D everything pitch by pitch in game.
right. We
So
need a freaking portable Hawkeye. What year do you think that's coming out? Like we can get you can have a like I want a portable TrackMan where I can have an app on my phone and just hold it up, and a portable Hawkeye where I can just do that. Like to that level. I think that'd be pretty sick.
tell Joey to get on that one too.
Yeah. Joey, no pressure, buddy, but you're our research and development director. That's your job. Joey probably won't even watch this.
No, probably not.
No, so like obviously like with the tech we hit on that a little bit. You know, when it comes to like pitch shapes and pitch design, like obviously a lot of kids don't have access to a TrackMan. But if they do, and if they're doing an in-house assessment, that's obviously part of it, right? We want to kind of get an arsenal. We have our arsenal score that we base a lot of stuff off of, our in-house equation that we use for guys. But um, when you're looking at pitch types, pitch shapes, um, when to utilize, you know, how have you helped guys when it comes to their overall arsenal, I guess, and like, because I see it all the time when guys come in. It's like, oh, I got, for an assessment or whatever. Oh, I got two seam, I got a four seam, I got a curveball, I got a slider, I got a changeup, I got a splitter, I got this, I got that. And it's like, hold on, you're not Trevor Bauer, sorry, but like, then we kind of narrow it down to like what they do well, and then over time maybe we can expand on that, right? Like I don't ever want to say a guy can't throw 5 pitches, because if they can, hell yeah. But a
Yeah.
lot of times the curveball is a slider and the slider's a curveball. So like how do you kind of walk through with guys like, hey, this is what I think we need to stick to, from an arsenal perspective, and how do you shape guys' like thought process when it comes to that?
Yeah, and I think as guys get older, that's more of a conversation. Like some of the younger athletes, we'll talk about pitch usage more, but generally, I'm not going to say like, hey, your four seam isn't as
Yeah.
good. And going back to what you said about the TrackMan data, like I think that as much as possible is great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that we joke about IDAR and everything else. Like I think for the most part, being able to see a video and being able to take that, you know, I can at least make a determination on the profile of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So there's guys that I've talked to. I've got a college arm at a junior college, and his two seam or sinker and sweeper are very very good, and he throws a cutter and a curveball and a changeup.
Yeah.
So like you said, it's a lot of pitches. So I think something for him, like as he's worked through everything, our focus has been on sinker, sweeper, cutter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because in my opinion, as of right this second, those are probably the best pitches that would be graded. Um, but that's not saying that like as we've worked, we've tinkered with a couple of grips on the other pitches, like the changeup, like you know, obviously Chris adds like a kick change to everyone and it works magically, which is awesome for him.
Yeah.
But stuff like that, like I really enjoy the pitch design aspect of everything.
Yeah.
Obviously a lot of guys are get too caught up in the TrackMan and everything else. But I think that finding a pitch that's going to be, you know, career altering maybe is
Mm-hmm.
the word. But stuff like that like really excites me in terms of helping kids out. I think
Yeah.
that obviously it's all kind of case to case in terms of what someone needs, what their arsenal looks like. But I had a college arm start 2 weeks ago, I think, and I've actually given him the same breaking ball that you gave me when I started in August.
Hmm.
And he's working through that now. And, you know, again, going back to some of the experiences that I've had where him and I basically threw identical balls, um,
Hmm.
and they don't grade well, right? And
Right.
this is like my college breaking ball, and you adding, different stimulus, a different grip, a different idea has been extremely beneficial. Not just oh, it looks cool on TrackMan, but the results speak for themselves a little bit in game.
Right.
Um, and I think stuff like that is really important just to be able to see, again, without as much TrackMan, just to be able to see what pitches do and um, how we can improve. And that being said, I think that guys that send me more video and send me and we can talk through things, that's how we get results out of that, not you know just kind of guessing.
Yeah, for sure. I think, so many kids, like you mentioned the kick change, like so many like pronators are like, oh, I want to throw. It's like, dude, you don't need like
Yeah.
you don't need to. Why, and I think we can talk about social media all we want, but um like making sure you're actually doing the things that are working are gonna help you, I
Hmm.
think are so important because some of these kids will like see these videos and I mean we do it like you have to highlight the guys, you have to kind of put out drills, like it's just part of that process, right? To do what you have to do on the social media side, but that might not be the best drill for you. That might not be the best
Absolutely.
pitch, grip for you. That might not be the best cue for you, right? Like just because you saw it, something maybe we posted, that doesn't mean that it's for you, right? And I think that's kind of the importance of now I think I'm gonna do a video on this, like the importance of like year-round training with like a
Yeah.
coach or year-round programming. Because I think training kind of gets overused. Like we're not like this is like coaching and programming throughout a full year, right? It's not like we're training for something. We're not only helping you throw harder at the right points of the year, but we're also helping, like what you're saying, in game to make our athletes better and have better performances in game, right? And that's something that I think is an all year round kind of all encompassing,
I
you
think so
know.
too.
Yeah, I think that's super important. So, um, I guess on the mechanical side of things, give me like two or three common things that you see, or do you, I ask these, like, I'll ask, like, I talked to a MLB organization the other day about one of our guys that probably gonna get drafted, and we just kind of went on down a rabbit hole on text, and I was like, what trends do you see? Like, is it I'll always ask like trends in the sense of, is it a pitch shape? Is it pitch usage? Is it a mechanical thing? Like, what are some things that some of those guys are looking at, right? So I guess my question to you is like, what trends do you see with a lot of the athletes that you work with? What are some common things that you see, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think what first comes to mind is guys that are trying to muscle up and throw too hard.
Yeah.
And that was, a big thing for me in my training. But I can think of three or four out of my, 30-ish guys right now that are, you know, at times when they're wild, a lot of the time, they're gonna yank their head and pull their hat off.
Hmm.
I think that's been, something we've talked about. We talk about trying to think
I'll
a lot
joke
of
with guys on the 3D, like where we'll see like head rotation.
yeah,
It's like that number should not be there, right? Like you're getting out of posture, you're pulling torsos early. A lot of
yeah,
times, I've seen this a lot lately, is like, and it's pretty common a lot with a lot of guys, is like guys that don't rotate the pelvis well, they'll extend out of that back leg, right? They'll push out of it. And then that kind of locks the pelvis a little bit to where they can't really rotate the pelvis efficiently. So then if I can't rotate the pelvis, I have to compensate somewhere. Top half compensates, hat, head, all that stuff fly. Arm gets freaking just drugged through nothing basically.
yeah,
And there's really nothing to anchor yourself on. It's pretty common. I think, and going back to the social media, I think a lot of it has to do with that, where
Yeah.
A lot of these guys see these dudes throwing hard and they're like, "Oh, I gotta throw harder." And so they're
I got to try harder, right?
I gotta try harder to throw harder, and then all of a sudden, delivery and the sequencing gets all out of whack, and we're compensating, and just not good for anybody. And it's obviously not good for velo, but it's not good for command, dude. And I think that's such an underlooked and underappreciated aspect of baseball. It's very rare to see somebody that can is able to dot at a very high level. Um,
Yeah.
but like having an understanding of where the baseball's going, a general area, right? Like you watch big leaguers, I don't remember, and I could be completely wrong here, but the stat recently that came out, like the average big league miss, I think Driveline did it, was like a foot or something like
Yeah.
that. Like
Yeah. Something like 10,
it's
12, 10, 12 inches.
yeah, and the best in the world miss consistently 10 inches away from their intended spot.
Yeah.
So we don't have to be perfect. Like I don't expect somebody to freaking dot down and away, and then, it's very rare that that happens. You're going to miss in some capacity more times than not. But going back to what I said, like it's more so having a general understanding of where the baseball is going, not
Absolutely.
non-competitive throws, right?
Yes.
Like
And I think, yeah. And I think that there's
so
like
underlooked.
a
Or
couple different cues that have done that, like, or that they'll show you the non-competitive throws. Like,
hmm
if a kid texts me, he's like, I had no idea why I wasn't around the zone today. And then he sends me video, and whether it's, the front arm, the glove arm, like
Right.
that's probably a favorite of mine because mine was so bad when I got to you guys that I've
hmm
worked on it a lot. But maybe the glove arm goes really early, and then, like you said, everything pulls based on that. Your arm doesn't actually spiral everything else.
Right.
So I'd say like those are my two like biggest trends that I see when we're struggling. I think that, you know, the timing thing is really has been really important in terms of a lot of guys' process here.
Yeah.
As timing has gotten better, strikes improve, velo improves, and they feel better, which right really are the three things that
Yeah.
we're kind of looking for, right? So I think that
Not a bad trio right there.
yeah, so I think that those are, the timing aspect of everything is huge, obviously, and sequencing and timing kind of go hand in hand with our delivery. So I think, overall those are like the most important things.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. It's a lot of these kids, man, like it just, and I know not everyone's like super blessed to be able to just throw the ball 100 miles an hour, right? And so I think, kind of going back to social media, it's like everyone sees this and they are trying so hard to throw hard, and I think that's an epidemic. Like you
Absolutely.
hear all the old school guys and are like, "Well, why don't you teach command?" It's like we are. Like that's so important to us. Command, pitch types, arsenal, like usage, all that. It's so important. And it's like, oh, the old school guys will argue like those facilities only train velocity. It's like, you don't see everything that goes into this, right? And if we can get guys to move more consistently and more efficiently, a lot of the time the command it gets a lot better,
Yeah.
right? Because like we have a more a consistent understanding of where the hand's coming out and where the ball's coming out of the hand, and release points and release heights become a lot more consistent, which is going to lead to better command. So um, to anyone that thinks it's just like a velocity place, like they're so far removed from reality. I think like there's so much that goes into this that they don't even uh, can begin to understand, I
Yeah,
think.
I agree.
We have command day bullpens. Like that's probably one of the more, used
Yeah, I program that all the time.
yeah, and it's a perfect thing. Like, we have different bullpen variations, and that's one of them where we can just say like, hey, like how many, intended target is X, like how many times did you hit X, track it. Okay, boom, this is what it was today. All right, are we progressing over time or are we not, right? Like what do we need to do to get better? So that's my soapbox on on that, I guess. Um, Anybody you want to, I guess one question I want to ask, like when it comes to your process, how often are you communicating? And you kind of hit on it earlier when you said like, you in between games and things, but
Yeah.
like when it comes to your process, when it comes to like communication, like how would you explain that? How would anyone that might be interested in doing remote, like what can they expect when it comes to communication with you?
Yeah. So for me, I'm gonna try and reach out at least twice a week. Obviously, I make it completely known that I am open whenever.
hmm
open to texts or open to calls or whatever. So yeah, I will make a point to reach out once, if not twice a week. And then generally, I tell everyone when we first start that the way that people get the most out of this is if they reach out to me and send me video and send me,
Yeah.
um, I've got I think he's a rising sophomore right now in high school, but he sends me stuff every day. And that was a deal that, he's going to be, you know, he's not going to be, wasting this
Hmm.
opportunity to work with us and to do his thing because he's already gotten better, and I think he sees the fruit in that. And he's someone that's going to send me 15 videos a day.
Hmm.
And obviously, like that's the top of that spectrum, but like I also have kids that, I wish would send me more videos so I can help more. So
Right. That's the hard part.
yeah,
It's like because you're relying on, well, especially the younger cat. I think the older guys have a pretty good, feel and
yes,
grasp for it, but the younger guys, I don't know if it's like they're nervous to do it or if they feel like they're bothering, but like, when I have a few remote guys that I'm working with, and that's kind of always my first thing is like, dude, like blow my phone up. I might not respond right away, right?
yeah,
But
that's
we need to see that stuff to be able to kind of communicate and to see where progress is and where we need to continue to work.
absolutely,
So, if you guys are interested in doing remote, the one thing that I ask, and I think Ryan will echo too, is like make sure you're able to communicate how you're feeling, send videos. Like you're never bothering us. Like this is what we do for a living and we enjoy it. I think that's the most enjoyable part of my day is um, working with the kids and seeing progress and kind of relating to them. So, make sure that you're communicating. That's I don't any remote program to work, that I think is kind of
yeah,
at the utmost importance.
I agree. Yeah,
So, anything you want to add, Chas? I'll kind of give you the floor as we exit this high octane podcast. I think you're the first one that we're doing in the studio, so I'm pretty
yeah,
fired up about
it
that.
looks good. It looks good.
What do you think about the lighting? Honestly, I'm trying to figure that out still a little bit. Like I don't know what to do. I have a freaking light up here, and then I got me and Kate put these like blue neon lights up.
Yeah,
I don't know how I feel about them. I don't know if you can kind of see it maybe a little bit, but
maybe I can't see much of it. Can you? Is there one light overhead and then one light on you?
one light overhead here, and then the neon lights are kind of on top. That's the two
Okay.
lights I have going, but I don't like. Do I get a ring light? What do I do? And I mean,
Maybe
people freaking give me uh what word am I looking for?
suggestions.
Recommendations, yeah,
Yeah,
suggestions. Like give me something to make this better because I'm gonna do a lot of content from in here, I think.
yeah.
Um, and I want it to look good. So if anyone
We'll,
has any
we'll do some
recommendations,
research.
yeah, I don't know what the hell I'm doing with this stuff, dude. I'm just kind of winging it.
Looks good
Yeah, it's doable right now.
for sure.
But all right, yeah, go ahead. What do you got? What do you
Yeah.
anything you want to add on?
Yeah, just to finish that last thought, I think being able to communicate obviously is the most important.
Hmm.
It's a goal of mine to be, like I said, available. Whenever everyone's wanting to reach out to me, try to get on a phone call once a week, around schedules and stuff, just to
Sure.
kind of the human element, right? Like
Uh-huh.
it's different texting and calling, but
Data and human driven. I like
data
that.
and human driven. I like that.
Yeah, we're gonna roll with that one, I think.
Yeah, but I've really enjoyed it. I think that this is, like I've said before, I think this is definitely dollar for dollar a steal and the best you're going to find out there.
Sure.
You know, would love to have anyone listening on this. Send me a text or a email, Ryan at octanebaseball.com, and I will.
With an eight. Octane with
There
an it's not octane with an O, it's octane with an eight instead of the O.
you go. There you
It's
go.
confusing but there'll be a post to kind of explain that too.
For sure. But anyone that wants any more information, please reach out to me. I'll get on a phone call with you whenever. And I really do think this is the best on the market right now, and you're going to get better, and
Yeah.
that's something that I can say pretty confidently because it's happened to me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go through a couple guys just
Sure. Highlight some dudes, man.
yeah,
What
let's
you got?
highlight some dudes. So let's start. I'm gonna start. Justin Davis is a rising senior. No, excuse me, rising freshman at Lynchburg College. He came to us in January, I believe, or
Hmm.
right in the middle of February, right before his high school season. Had not thrown a pitch in a high school game in over a year. Had just come off of Tommy John surgery. Um, you know, he's a guy that works unbelievably hard. Had a little bit of a prior relationship before the program, but have gotten to
Hmm.
know him really, really well. Um, a guy that went from not pitching for an entire year to first team all conference. I can pull some stats up right now, but we're gonna highlight him
Little post, I think,
in a
somewhere.
little post soon.
Yeah.
But that guy ended up with 66 strikeouts in 47 innings and a 2.6 this year.
Hmm.
Had the pleasure to go out and watch him pitch, and that guy's you know, just a college starter already in high
Sure.
school and has actually backed it up and is pitching in a college summer league right now and has absolutely dominated. So
Yep.
um, can't say enough about Justin. I think that he's a pro in terms of crushing the weight room, crushing the um, you know nutrition and prep and everything else that he needs to take care of his body.
Sure.
Have been super fired up working with him. Really quickly, I think Dane Purdy's another one.
Same high school.
Same high school, same guys. Absolutely not. That was my rival high school, so I'm not. This is not me playing favorites, but
Yeah.
Dane Purdy's a guy that struggled a little bit as he was starting to come to us for his remote program. Have worked really, really hard on his shoulder strengthening. We just put a video out on this. Shoulder strengthening has been really big for him.
Hmm.
Timing has been huge in terms of his
Yeah.
delivery. Has he PR'd at 91 last week? Has gotten a decent amount of interest after that.
Yep.
Uncommitted rising senior, um, and hoping that won't stay that way for long because
Yeah, because he can spin it too, man.
we
We've
can
known
spend
Dane for a little bit now, and um, obviously
absolutely.
he's a fantastic mover. Like his 3D was pretty sick, honestly, and like you said, that timing aspect. I know Chris is huge on that, and um, you know, he's a guy that Dane's a guy that I think is just kind of scratching the surface when it comes to potential.
Absolutely.
And I think him where he's at right now mentally is in an awesome spot. Just talking to him briefly, and he's been through some stuff, and I think to see him kind of break through a little bit has been awesome.
I
And
agree.
that's that human element, right? Like
Yeah.
being able to relate to those guys and making sure that their heads in the right spot and not getting too discouraged when things don't necessarily go their way, but then they can bounce back and
Yeah.
do what he's doing now. I think is pretty fun to be a part of.
Yeah, I agree. And he's someone that's really taken advantage of, using me as a resource and
Good.
him and I talk a lot. So I think that relationship's huge.
Hmm.
A couple more guys. Ben Bryant, is a guy that had some injury issues last year, came to
Hmm.
us kind of middle of his high school season, ended up putting up really, really good numbers, committed to, he's going to go to Wesleyan
Hmm.
in the fall, up in Connecticut. And, he's a guy that,
Smart guy. He'll be the president one day. We always joke
yeah,
when I
we
talk
should
to
clip
Ben
this.
that was I'm either gonna be his running mate or vice versa.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's really
absolutely.
gonna happen, but he's a really, really smart kid, bright kid, and works his ass off too. So
Absolutely. And yeah, can't speak enough about his character. Finished with a 1.38 this spring.
balled
Um,
out, man.
yeah, which is just, unbelievable,
Mhm.
especially in terms of where he was. You know, a couple more guys, I think Christian Davis is a really good example too. Someone
Yeah.
that just came off of Tommy John. First live at bats were probably a month and a half, 2 months ago. Was
Hmm.
playing summer ball right now and really, really pitching well. And
You up to 90, 92, 93?
yeah, I
Yeah.
think definitely two, maybe a three, but
Hmm.
he spins it really well. He's a guy that we worked some pitch design, we worked
Sure.
some weight room stuff with him. Cam Brown's another guy that took a year off and is going to play at Mars Hill next year, and
Yeah.
has been very impressive work ethic, and is seeing the fruits of that this summer. Has like a point 0.6 or something, a point 0.4.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's
Jeez.
crushing it. But
It's great.
um yeah, man, like there's definitely more that I can name, and we'll be releasing some videos and stuff kind of
Yeah.
highlighting some of these guys. But I can't wait to add to that list. I think that
Yeah.
we have we've got a really good thing going right now, and would love to have a bunch of guys jump on board with us, man, because I think
Sure.
that I think we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg. So
Yeah, I think we're just kind of scratching the surface with a lot of this stuff, man. And I think the right
absolutely.
people are in the right place. And, I'm just very grateful for the team that we have and everything that you've done. It's been really impressive. And I've got lucky when it comes to staff and who we have on the team. So, as we continue to add people, we want to continue that trend. And obviously, Octane's growing. So I think we're hiring a pitching guy right now. And pretty close to knowing who that is. I have a favorite in mind, so we'll see how that process lays out. The hitting side's growing, but everything is trending in a great direction. So really proud of the staff. I'm really proud of everybody, and um, you know, excited for what the future holds. So it's been a fun ride so far, and we're just getting going. But
Yes,
all right. Well, that's all I had, man. I'm gonna do a 3D review here with Cran Smeltzer. Um, but this was a lot of fun, Chas. I would love to do this more. I think this is really
yeah,
good and beneficial for everybody. Just to talk shop and talk pitching and those kind of things. So, Brian
good one.
Chassie, appreciate it, man. This is the High Octane Podcast. Signing off. See y'all.